Welcome, everyone, and welcome to the Solution Club at the beginning of the new world. I am your co-host, Jamin Shively, and anyone else who wants to join me as co-host, please feel free. And we're super excited. Got a great agenda today, and I thought I'd, well, first, let me just give an opportunity for anyone who wants to either say hello or a brief introduction or a brief update or anything like that. Just feel free to jump in. All right. And just jump in anytime. I'm going to go ahead and screen share, and we'll go over the agenda. Let's see here. This one. Okay. All right. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay. I assume that looks good to everybody. All right. Since I have trouble seeing you when I'm on screen share, I'm just going to trust everyone to just jump in, even if I'm in mid-sentence, if you have anything to say or ask or anything like that. Fair enough? Just jump in. Okay. I'm just going to read through it because that's the easiest. I've been thinking long and hard, basically nonstop since our last block party. And here's what we have come up with, because this is all of us. And let me just see. We got Emery coming in. Nolan, anyway, I'll let you handle those, Nolan. Unless, anyway, it's all good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. Well, here, let me just welcome Emery. Emery! Oh my goodness, what happened to your screen there? Did a piranha like take over or something? I don't know what's going on there, but it doesn't look very vegan. Anyway, let's hoping all is well with you, Emery, and let's rock on here with, I'm just screen sharing here. Okay, so the following, it builds on the two emails from last week, preceding the Solution Club and the block party. A week ago, the email preceding the Solution Club, that was about a mile long, that email. For those of you who read it, thank you. And anyway, there's good stuff in there, so I referenced that. But here I go, just jumping in. There are three pillars, which are mostly sequential. I'll get to that. And between the three of them support the whole of collective superintelligence and the solution engine, which Mother Earth needs most from humanity right now. We need real solutions, and we ain't making them. We're not making them happen. Not yet anyway, and that's what we're going to delve into, is how do we make them happen. So first, let me lay out the three pillars. I'll just highlight what I'm talking here. And then I'll proceed to identify two distinct mega strategies which originate in the two different pillars and ultimately lead us to the same very good place. Pillar one, a community of communities. Imagine taking all of the myriad communities out there, which respectively are trafficking in one or more of the major topic areas we are trafficking in within the Radish community. What are these areas we're trafficking in? Saving life on Earth, cooling the planet, and radically transforming humanity to become a caretaker species, and also collective intelligence, etc. These are the big, kind of the big uber topics we're addressing here in Radish. And so I'm basically saying, what if we find all these communities that are talking about these things and bring them together into a community of communities? In my emails below, I suggested that this community of communities, and in a previous email a week ago, I talked about this is a federation. I have since backed away from the word federation. It just seems like too much of a loaded word. And community of communities, it just seems way more appropriate, right? Federation, it's like, what are you gonna do? Go blow up Russia or something? I mean, it just seems kind of, it's just like, it's like too political, it's too charged, it's too national, you know what I mean? But community of communities, number one, it's way more catchy. A community of communities? Oh, what? You know, etc. All right. And anyway, in my emails below, in the previous emails from last week, which are all in the email I sent out yesterday, I used the word federation. I'm now backing off on that. I also suggested that it could be open to the general public. Now, this is interesting. Like, this meeting is open to the general public, so is the block party. And while I do believe there is a time and a place to have open houses for the general public to meet with us, I actually believe that the purposes of the community of communities is better served by, for the most part, organizing meetings which only members of one or more member communities are invited. This is probably a controversial point, one I'm happy to discuss and happy to change my mind on. Okay, I'm going to pause right there, go back to screen share, and just talk about that for a minute. So what I'm envisioning is that this community of communities, part of the reason that we haven't come together yet as a community of communities, other than very loosely, right? Oh, hey, I heard about this meeting that's happening over here. Oh, really? Oh, you know, and some of us go there. Oh, I heard about this other meeting over. Oh, really? Oh, okay. You know, so we're kind of loosely connected, right? What there needs to be is nothing short of the biggest planetary movement ever concocted to bring humanity together, to cool the planet, heal the planet, generally, including healing all of ourselves, right? It's kind of like we're a couple of rival gangs having a shootout in some big mansion, and nobody's really paying attention to the fact that the mansion's on fire, right? We're having this turf war. We're each trying to take over this mansion. And we've, in the process of having this turf war, this gang war, with bullets flying everywhere, we've set the mansion on fire. And yet we're so focused on outcompeting each other that we've completely lost track of the fact that we're burning our home to the ground. And then it doesn't matter who won the turf war. There's no more turf, and there's no more habitat to support any life once we've destroyed everything. So we're, and I sort of frame it in those terms. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this. We're in no hurry. We've got 8 hours of Solution Club ahead of us. So start percolating that hot tea, that hot English tea. Just kidding. No, but really, you know, this is an interesting way of looking at it. I mean, I often think about this point that humanity, we're so conditioned to competition, and we, not we, the people on this call, but our ancestors, basically. And it's interesting because I say our ancestors, they did it. But they have ancestors too. They were born into a screwed up world too. So it's like, you know, you can keep passing the buck back, but where does it end? But the bottom line is that somewhere along the line in our evolutionary history, probably mostly around the time of the agricultural revolution, we, not to point the finger at anyone but ourselves, we, humanity, concocted an omnicidal game of hoarding, of separation, of more for me, less for you, right? And of course, you know, we've also learned all these really nice ways to pretend that that's not what's going on. Like, we go to church and we pray and we hug each other and we shake hands and we say peace and all that stuff, right? But at the end of the day, come on, let's not kid ourselves. We're in a life and death game of competition. There's plenty for everyone, but we're not playing the game that way. we're playing a very different game. We were born into, conditioned into, it was beaten into us. Now, damn it, you go to school and get good grades so you can get a good career and make money and have more than the rest, right? So that you don't starve, because guess what? If you don't do all that, you're going to starve and no one's going to feed you, because that's how this game works. We don't take care of each other in this game. It's everyone for themselves. Yeah, we go to church on Sunday and sing songs about taking care of each other. But come Monday morning, I'm slitting your throat at the office, right? So that I can get your job, your money, your whatever, right? So anyway, I don't want to harp too much on that, but I'll go back to screen share. And really, I encourage everyone to just jump in with any thoughts you have at any time. Never any pressure to speak, but just jump
So
in.
is raising her hand.
Oh, so yes, please. Thank you. Thanks, Nolan. Yes, so.
Hi. You were just saying about the competition, how ingrained it is. It's written into our language. Making a bomb, making a killing.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, how'd you do? Oh, I made a killing. Right.
Making a bomb. No, making a bomb, making a killing.
Well, I know about making a killing, making a bomb. That may be more.
And the third one, making a packet. Think of that ecologically. Making a bomb, making a killing, making a packet. Because packaging is how you add value. So it's capitalism is written into our language in that colloquial grassroots speak. Making a bomb, making a killing, making a packet.
Mm.
I'm just endorsing what you're saying.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, so. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's built into our language, our culture, and it's anyway. Yeah, we could go on and let's do that. Everyone keep jumping in. Great comment. So let me get back to the context where I was sharing that. Oh yeah. So this community of communities, and that's right. I was talking about why it is that we haven't come together yet, and the short answer is it's not part of the game that we're playing. Right? We're playing a game of hoarding, and so this whole idea of coming together in a way, a lot of people just laugh at it. Right? In the 60s, there was this whole movement of people coming together and getting away from the material and getting away from hoarding and working together and living on communes and all that stuff. And, that went the route that it went, but it's generally agreed that it didn't work, right? And in fact, we were on a call a couple weeks ago with someone who was making that point. David Boville was making the point that, hey, all that, good, lovey, let's all come together. It didn't work. So what's missing? And his point was that we need some backbone. We need to be like the corporations and create some big for-profit thing that has backbone. So he was basically walking away from the very idea that we could really work together and come together in some altruistic way. And what I would posit, I didn't really get a chance to address that in that meeting, but I'll say it here, that what I would posit is that we're in a totally different situation now than we were in the 60s. Do you have your hand up, Jackie? Or are you just kind of, okay. Is that in the 60s, we had to get together physically, right? And you had to, if you were a guy, you had to grow out your hair and put one of these on your head in order to, be recognized as one of the in crowd. And, you basically had to be there physically. So you had to basically like move to San Francisco or move to whatever part of London or, wherever the hippies were doing their thing. And so logistically, that was a huge constraint. Well, now in the age of Zoom, you don't have to travel anywhere. Right? You can be in the comfort of your own bedroom and just click on a link, and voila, you're in the community. So we have an opportunity to come together now like we never have before. Having said that, there is an understandable degree of trepidation in jumping into someone else's meeting who you don't know. You may have heard about the meeting, but there's still trepidation for actually going there, right? And jumping into someone else's meeting who you don't know, like this meeting that I just mentioned. I was actually, shut down, not given an opportunity to speak, insulted. It was terrible. It was a terrible experience. I hung in there because I was fascinated to see how would this play out, right? I actually have a recording of the meeting. I haven't published it, but I might as well, because I think it'd be a good sort of example. I was thinking about publishing it under the banner of the No Asshole Rule, which is the name of a really good book. And just putting, lesson number 1, right, of the No Asshole Rule. But anyway, I'm going down a bit of a rat hole here, and I'm using that as an example to make a point. The point is, there is so much anger, so much bullying, right? I was bullied in the meeting, right, by the meeting organizer. And there's so much anger, there's so much bullying, there's so much ego that's built into our current game that often, even when we try to get together and do something altruistic, those things creep in. And, especially among males, I've seen it most among males. And it's kind of like, oh, no, I'm the big smart, monkey here. You all shut up, and I'm going to, tell you how it is, right? And so we have this fundamental issue that we basically don't really know how to come together, right? Other than in these beautiful little pockets, like what we're creating here with the Solution Club, the Block Party, the Divine Feminine, which is part of the Block Party, which Jackie and Melissa and Myra organize every Friday. And so my point is that we're, as a species, we're learning how to come together and work together and talk with each other and, for lack of a better word, play nice with each other, right? We're still learning how to do that as a species. I think the folks who are on this meeting, by and large, are quite evolved in that department. So I'm not pointing my finger at anyone on this call, but I'm just saying that we as a species have a ways to go, right? And we're just learning how to do that. So when I think about this community of communities and coming together, I think there's one really important point that we cannot overlook, which is, how do we come together, right? And what are the rules of the game? How does it work, right? Is it okay to interrupt each other, right? Now, let me just make a fine point about that. When I screen share and I can't see everybody on the screen like I normally can, I invite you to just jump in. That's not an interruption, that's an invitation. So when you jump in like that, you're responding to an invitation. What I'm talking about is when, under normal dialogue, people interrupting each other and people bullying each other in different ways, putting each other down. And that's something we've had a whole learning curve here on the Solution Club and at the Block Party. And, and 3 people have actually been excluded from these meetings because of their being mean to other people on the meetings. And I've had to really learn, because there's a bit of a gray area, somebody gets excited and they jump in because they want to make a point, right? And if that happens, sometimes I'll just just to give an example, like if Uncle Frank were to suddenly butt in and say, but Jamin, I'd say, okay, right. I'd probably let it pass. But what I'm really talking about are people who are persistently interrupting and dominating and even putting down. And it's the put downs. I've gotten really good at just getting right on top of that. So I'm getting much more nimble at, stopping bullying and meanness when it happens in my meetings, right? In the meetings that I organize. Like I mentioned, this other meeting, it wasn't my meeting. I went there as a guest and was treated horribly. And, but I just, wow, it's not my meeting. I'm not here making the rules. And I literally hung in there for over an hour just to observe. Is this really happening? And how are they going to manage it? Yes, Fred, go for it.
What was the meeting about? How is it related to what we're doing?
Yeah, good question. So it was a meeting within Ben Roberts' community. And I love Ben. I think he's doing a super good job. But anyway, he's organized this whole series of meetings called Now What, right, under the banner of Now What. And so this was one of those meetings led by a gentleman named David Boville, who's, I think, somewhere in England, probably London area. And it was a meeting on like wikis, and it was, it was some interesting aspect of collective intelligence, right? And it was actually, and he was actually quite polite at the beginning, welcoming everyone and all that. And then when we went to breakout rooms, that's when he got really nasty. Like I said, it's all recorded, and I think it'd be an interesting sort of study. And I think it's valuable to actually study these things, and even work on it. I mean, even have like I'd love to have a meeting with him where we review it and say, look, what the hell? Because, and this is someone who organizes a number of meetings, right? And is somewhat known in sort of the collective intelligence community, probably more so in Europe than the United States, but the whole community itself is very nascent. And so what's the point I'm getting at? The point I'm getting at is, if we are going to have a community of communities, it absolutely needs to be a safe space and a space where people feel safe and comfortable to share and be heard and not be attacked, not be put down, not be excluded. And I get into this a little bit more in the document that I'm screen sharing, but we need to, if we're going to help Mother Earth, all the other brother and sister species and all that, we need to get our own internal game right. We need to get our own internal house in order as humanity, as a species. It's kind of like on the airplane, put on your own oxygen mask first before helping others. We need to get ourselves sorted out. And
Damon,
yes, sir.
What do you think precipitated the bullying? What was going on? I'm just curious, because this being, sort of the elite group within the elite group, if we can't figure out how to talk to each other, it's doing it on a big scale is going to be really difficult. So I'm curious, what happened that provoked this bullying response?
Yeah. So what had happened was, so this was the meeting organizer who organized the whole big event, and he invited us to form breakout rooms if we wanted to. So I said, well, I'd like to lead a breakout room on this topic. He said, great, I'll even join you. Great. So formed a breakout room. Now, as the meeting organizer, he was going from meeting to meeting. Oh my goodness, Jamie.
Oh, good to see you, Jamie.
Jamie Gilchrist?
That's Jamie Gilchrist.
Jamie. Hey, buddy.
Look at Jamie. He looks as shocked to see us as we do to see him.
Wow.
Here I am.
Jamie, brother, great to see you. Great to see you.
And I see we've got Moses in the house.
Got who?
Bertha's most
All right, Jamie, you're breaking.
her own hairdo.
Oh, hey man, you can't get a fucking haircut now. Excuse me. I mean, yeah. I've had my hair cut for 2 months and I have an appointment for June 15th. That's the soonest. Same woman's cut my hair for over 35 years. And it's getting to the point where it's too dangerous to venture out and have some unknown deal with it. Anyway, on a personal note.
All right.
Wonderful to see you, Jamie. Really.
All righty. Awesome. And I got something going on in the chat here. Let me just debunk
So
that.
finish what happened.
Oh, yeah. So Emery said that Ben is a very protective guy, protecting his turf. And actually, and then Nolan clarified, I think Jamin's referring to David. Indeed, Nolan is correct. I was not talking about Ben. I've got nothing but good things to say about Ben Roberts. But this was the gentleman who was leading a specific meeting within Ben Roberts's bigger, collection of meetings under the banner of Now What. Jamie, we're talking about a specific case of bullying and disrespect that happened at a recent meeting that was on collective intelligence, where I was bullied, I was disrespected, I was shut up, shut down, basically told, that what I was saying was of no importance. And, no, it was crazy. And so what happened, so the specific thing was, so we had started the big meeting, and this gentleman, David, was very polite to everyone. And then when we went to breakout rooms, I started a breakout room, led a conversation. And he was kind of, he was there for a while and then gone. And then at the end of the whole big meeting, he said, hey, you're welcome to go back to your breakout rooms and stay as long as you want. So I said, great. I went back to the breakout room and I was leading a conversation. Nolan was there and another gentleman from Massachusetts was there. And we talked for about 40 minutes uninterrupted. And David wasn't there. And then he popped in and literally he was like listening to me for less than a minute. Didn't have any of the context of the previous 40 minutes, was listening for less than a minute. And he said, no, look, Jamie, what you're talking about, we've done all this envisioning before, right? And, envisioning, that's all been done on basically by smarter people than yourself was the, was the message. And that what's really interesting now is to talk about this, and that's what we're going to talk about now, and da-da-da-da. And then he kind of had a private sort of one-on-one meeting with this other gentleman from Massachusetts, who was a very nice guy. But it was textbook. I'll just call it for what it is. This is actually a technical term. I'm not using profanity here. There's a professor at Stanford who wrote an excellent business book called The No Asshole Rule. And he breaks it down exactly what this asshole behavior is. And he said, there's no other word for it. This is what it is. And so he was mainly focused on the epidemic of assholes in American corporations. And anyone who's worked in a big American corporation, hey, my brother's calling. Edward, brother, hey, I'm in a meeting. I know you're calling on my birthday. I appreciate it. All right.
Happy birthday, baby Bubba.
Thank you.
Later.
Okay. All right. I'll call you back. Love you, Edward.
Okay, love you too.
Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye. All right. So, it is, and I was at Microsoft at the time when I read this book, and we just had, you think COVID-19 is an outbreak? We had an epidemic of assholes at Microsoft. Epidemic, right? And the worst part is a lot of these people are actually pretty smart, right? They're like really good at being really bad, right? Like they really know how to hurt people. And they get up in the morning bound and determined to come into work to hurt people and to exercise their dominance, their dominion, right? And it ruined the place, right? And it's a very tough problem to solve, actually, for a number of reasons. And that's part of the reason I'm so grateful this was actually recorded, so we can actually, I mean, now that we're like recording meetings, you know, it's one thing if something happens and then, like, you know, you go to your manager or somebody's manager and you complain about it and they're like, well, who do I believe, right? Well, when it's recorded, you don't have to believe any, just watch, right? Just watch the recording. And we may do that. Maybe I'll just play that little clip at some point just to take a break. Because it's not that long, and then we can see exactly. In fact, why don't I just do that? Okay, let me find it. Bear with me, everybody. No, because this is actually, I think, part of the healing of all this is being able to, you know, to call it out when it happens, and work through it. All right, let me just find.
Hey, Jamin.
Yes.
You and I have talked about this in the past, and I talked about how we're going to manage the evil in the world as we try this transformation. And this is exactly what I was talking about. I mean, coming from the Department of Justice, it's like the pinnacle of assholes with machine guns. And I've seen it firsthand my whole career. And we've got to find a way around it because I don't think it's solvable. I think you got to find a way around it.
I can't hear.
It's not a behavior; it's a
clearly.
condition. It's a
It's a
condition
bad
these people
net.
have.
Jamie, we're having a really hard time hearing what you're saying. Let's see here. I'm going to see if I've found the meeting here, but you were breaking up there, Jamie.
Carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. I think I have found it. Let me just get to the point in the meeting.
What the I don't.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I found it. So I'm going to screen share.
With you here, it is perfect. Okay.
Okay.
See, that's required. We have to just.
Now I'll screen share. Okay, but Jamie, we heard the gist of what you were saying, but you were breaking up pretty bad. And there's another option. Melissa does this sometimes when she has a choppy connection, is she will
I think it's just because one of the mics is unmuted. So fast for us is unmuted there. I think that's probably causing the interference.
Oh, that's a part of it, James. Thank you, and great to see you, James. How you doing there, buddy?
Good, very good.
Awesome.
Back late as usual. I'll be late for my own funeral.
No, you're fine, brother. There is no late here. There is just, I'm just super grateful for you. All right. Anyway, we're talking about an experience that I actually recorded where I was bullied, and so we're talking about that. So I'm going to screen share and share computer sound. And so this is the recording of the meeting I was talking about. Just as a little bit of context, this is like 40 minutes into the meeting where this gentleman, David, had not been present. And then he suddenly shows up, and I'll just play it so you can see what happened.
So that everyone will just work on what they're most interested in working.
Okay, the guy in the upper left is this gentleman from Massachusetts. And I forget exactly how to pronounce his name, but anyway, super nice guy. And then you see Nolan there looking intently, Jamin scratching his beard, and then David will enter and we'll see what happens.
I think. And just feeling confident that other people are working on it, feeling empowered to work on it on a local level, feeling like you're not reinventing the wheel by seeing from other people's experiences and reading about other people so that you get driven towards action, seeing if you have local things that you can be part of, like seeing whether certain global conferences like the NAWA thing exists. Yeah. That would be cool. That would be really cool.
Well, you know what's super cool is, and here's a concept, you pulled up Brett Warshawski on the map there, who I'm a big fan of, and we've hung out for many hours together over the last couple months or so. But is the idea of thoughtware before software, right?
Mm-hmm.
A previous version of myself, a younger version of myself, would say, "Okay, great, let's code this thing. Let's create, let's code it." Right? But where I'm at right now is before even going to the keyboard and clicking button number 1. Right? Okay, I just paused for it. So that's David entering in the lower right with the red sofa. Hey, David, welcome back. Hey, welcome back, David. We're having a pretty cool conversation here, and now with you here, it is perfect.
Okay, I'll go and sit in the room over there because I just eaten some food, and I'm a bit sorry. I had to crash because I was flat out.
Oh, dude, don't worry about it. You're doing great. I'm just super grateful that you've created this space and brought us all together. So do whatever you need to do. Eat, drink, smoke, crash out, whatever. We'll be here carrying the beat. Happily.
Cool.
Alrighty. So I was just about to make the point that, so we're talking about creating essentially the backbone of the super intelligent network, not creating it, but imagining into it. And this gets to the difference between software and thoughtware. So rather than racing to code something up and implement it and put it out there as the next big thing, let's think our way into it. Let's dream our way into it. Let's envision it and have a rich network of conversations just around the envisioning of it, because the it is, I believe, going to be so transformational and so empowering, right? So anyway, so at the level of thoughtware, imagine this network that just everyone has access to, open source access to. Welcome, Robert. Great to see you. Welcome. Looks like your spaceship has landed safely back on Earth or some similar planet. It's friendly to carbon-based life, and welcome.
Welcome, Robert.
Robert, you're on mute there, buddy. You're muted.
Hey there.
I was going to go prepare some carbon-based food, so I wanted to make sure I passed David the full host. I don't know. Maybe I can just leave the call and it won't matter, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, you can leave the call.
Okay. Well, I will likely see you all hopefully very soon. After.
All right. Take it.
Have a great carbon-based afternoon, evening, and look forward to seeing your smiley carbon-based face again. All right. So anyway.
Hey, Jamin, just to pop in that from my point of view. I don't know how the other people are, but for me, totally clear and obvious that we can do this platform. Done things along that line for many, many years. We've at the moment we're integrating video conferencing into decentralized conversation spaces as well, and the blockchain. And there are various other, obviously, groups and people and companies doing it. So it's not. I don't need the kind of, oh, this is a vision thing and this is how we could do it. I come from a place where I assume we all see that in this group, right? Totally assume it. And I come from a place where the two problems that I see are, one is usually the projects and the groups doing it lack certain expertise. They're quite small, and we lack the scale of being able to do it. So what I'm really interested in is how the 4 or 5 of those projects team up, coordinate themselves efficiently, never mind the rest of the bloody world, right? How do they work out? What are their business models? Sometimes they, I don't know if you've got investment and you need to make this, that, and the other, which is great, right? But what is your partnership structure so that you can make productive arrangements with similar projects and then specialize on what you're doing? Because what we really need to do is network ourselves to build at scale, to storytell at scale, and market at scale. And we need the detail. right? So that's where I'm coming from in this perspective. I certainly see that everything we're talking about is super aligned, but I want to know, shall I ditch the video platform that I'm working on, that I'm investing on, which was missing with the blockchain and epistemic platform, which is very advanced, that Alex has, right? The most advanced in the world that I know of from reviewing them. And also I would like to explore things that I want to integrate, like the underscore protocol and the latest papers which basically have a very good structured for evolving documents that are both immutable and mutable. So combining the storytelling, and that means what storytellers do we have? What good filmmakers do we have? What great musicians do we have? What performers? What's the outreach strategy? Who are the partners? What is the business plan? So where is the investment coming from? And I don't mean just money investment, I mean time investment, heart investment, social investment, right? And how do we do that without losing our own hearts, right? Because to achieve a global consensus on climate scale, that is something that, let's say, the United Nations and the various COP26s cannot do, right? We need to deal with money, and we need to deal with power, and we need not to become like them. So it's like the devil is not in the rhetoric or what have you. I take that for granted. I just want to know the detail of particularly how we work together. How could I work with you, for instance, James? How could Othman here, how could we work together over the next 12 months? How many hours can you put in? How do you account for those hours? How do you get paid or not paid for those hours? How do you let go of your own ego in doing that, or your own company or your own project, to come together to deliver that? That was a little bit of a rant, by the way. I just thought I'd do that, just because sometimes I have a, yeah.
It's well, it's a very interesting thing. I guess I'll do the thing where I tell you, oh, there's this.
I'll just pause right there, but basically it goes on for another, literally, I kid you not, and it's all right there in the recording. I might as well just publish it so people can watch it if they want. But literally, this gentleman David did not give me an opening to talk ever again, and we went for an hour and 20 minutes from that moment that he just interrupted, not having any context at all, but just totally mischaracterized me as somebody whose head's up in the clouds just envisioning. And we're way past that. So dude, you must have got off at the wrong bus stop, but this is not elementary school, this is grad school. So anyway, but at the same time, it was there was some subtlety there, right? It kind of sounded like he was being, and I just listened. I was like, all right. But literally for the next hour and 15 minutes, it then broke into a private conversation where then David was trying to literally start doing business with this other gentleman, Osman, who was on the phone and on the call. And how do we, all right, well, let's set some, I mean, it was mind blowing. Welcome, Jiang, welcome. All righty. We are recording, and we can pause record. In fact, I'm just going to pause recording. What I often, all right. And so during the pause of recording, Jiang mentioned that she came from the Foresight Institute Zoom video conference. They know about us, we know about them. I haven't actually been to any of their meetings. I've been too busy hosting our own meetings here. But anyway, this is a great example of the kinds of communities which need to come together. And Jiang, we were just analyzing a situation of bullying in Zoom meetings, where we come together to talk about collective intelligence and co-creating solutions, and then certain people start kind of bullying and dominating other people, and it creates just a horrible environment for collaboration. And just so you know, here in this meeting here, and in all the meetings that we organize on Radish, we are extremely cautious to go in the opposite direction. Like we're all about compassion and letting everyone speak and share and be respectful to each other and all that. So we were just talking about that topic. And So, you know, the larger point I was getting to is that we need some sort of set of cultural agreements, of rules, and they can be simple. It doesn't have to be anything terribly complex, but some sort of agreement. And okay, John, good. Well, thanks for stopping by, John, and welcome back anytime. Just pop back in anytime. Love to get to know you. So some sort of agreements so that and rules so that we can have, you know, a compassionate, loving, productive, fun. Look, you know, when you're in a meeting and you're just with other loving people and you're all committed and passionate and you work together and it just happens. Think like Vegan World 2026, for example. Probably the most compassionate community I've ever met, I've ever encountered, right? And Jackie is a big part of that. So is Myra and others. When you're in that, you know, compassionate, loving space, everything just flows, right? And versus when you have this, again, using it as a technical term, I'm not trying to be profane here, but when you have this asshole element come in, it's like somebody ripping off a really big fart in a crowded elevator, right? It just permeates everything, right? There's no escaping it. I'll have to tell you all. Yeah, go ahead.
Jamin,
Yes, so please.
I'm English.
Yes, so yes.
That was meant to be a joke.
I beg your pardon?
I'm English. That's meant to be a joke about what you said. I'm English. The example you used.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that must be a hobby that they're in England. Anyway. All right. Anyway, and they do eat a lot of beans in England, so point well taken. So anyway.
No, my point was that we're too polite. We you know, I'm English. Like, oh, don't mention that. You know.
All righty. You know, and this is a fascinating thing because we do also we come from different cultures, right? This is a great example. And my favorite, you know, national culture in the world is Mexican culture. I feel much more at home in Mexico than I do in my own country, right? The United States. So and there's different cultural traditions and all that. When I was working for a big corporation in Mexico, and we'd meet with other subsidiaries in like Venezuela and Colombia, I mean, they literally have different words that if you use that word and they say, you know, it could literally mean something sexual when you had no intention of it at all, just in terms of how these different words are used. And so, you know, we have to be sensitive to that above all else. And I mean, among other things, but the specifics of the asshole behavior, right? Number one, it's and I highly recommend this book, the No Asshole Rule, because what they go into is, you know, how do you define it, right? Like for example, with David there in the recording that I just played, there was no moment where you could say, aha, there, you know, he's yelling at Jamin, he's using profanity, he's telling him to shut up, right? It was much more subtle, right? Much more subtle. Yes.
So, and also, in that situation, what I've noticed is the bullying paralyzes you. It's so toxic, it kind of renders you speechless, and so your thinking powers are temporarily not very good. So even if you in retrospect, you think, oh, I should have called that out immediately. But especially if you've got a very safe, creative space, and then this toxicity suddenly comes in, it's like a culture shock. It like I say, it paralyzes you. So your intentions to call out such nonsense it doesn't happen in a moment.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you're absolutely correct. I did feel paralyzed. I was just like, you know, and you don't, you articulated it perfectly. So I've got nothing to add on top of that. And in fact, especially when it's done by someone who's really just a master at the craft of being an asshole, when they're a master at that craft, right? They do it in such a way that it's really hard to be called out, right? You know, where was the moment where he dropped the F-bomb and said, shut up? There was no moment like that. That's the thing. And so this professor at Stanford, this professor of business at Stanford at their business school, finally took this on and said, all right, I got to get to the bottom of this. You know, where is the it here, right? And so he finally came up with a definition of an asshole. And the definition is, when you meet with that person at the end of the meeting, how do you feel about yourself? How do you feel?
Yeah.
That's it. It's as simple as that, right? And these people, you know, like David, who I just showed. I mean, and I hung out with him for an hour and 20 minutes. And even at the end, when he left, he gave some kind of half-ass excuse for kind of dominating. Oh, I'm kind of tired. You know, they've always got good excuses, right? And left without so much as saying, you know, Jamin, can I finally hear from you after an hour and 20 minutes of having shut you down and bullied you? Not even that. He was just gone, right? So, but one thing that's really exciting about this new medium and about recording is when such behavior does happen and it's recorded, then it's not like, well, I think you're having a clouded memory of that, right? I think you're mischaracterized. Where's the mischaracterization? It's all there on the recording, right? And so this coming together of communities, we really, you know, if we're gonna do this effectively and create a community of communities, for me, it's just obvious that we need to take great care to actually affect the no asshole rule. And then in the book, he goes, he's like, all right, well, now that we've diagnosed the problem, how do we solve it? And that's what the book is really about. Go for it. So, yes.
You know, like we have to deal with our inner bully. You know, like we've all got an inner Hitler and an inner bully. And that manifests itself in lots of different ways. I'm a kind of matter-of-fact person, and I've often been bullied, strangely, by this positivity rule. You know, like, oh, we must be positive, and you know, you can also be bullied by the very thing that you want. So you want the community of communities, you want safe space, but you can be bullied by that whole safe space. Oh, we don't talk like that here. Do you know what I mean? If you're a different type of character within the culture, you can feel, oh, you're not on the page because that's not your framework for understanding things. You know, so, you know, like I like critical thinking. Some people view that as being negative. You know, it's a matter of perception. They're not used to having something they've said picked apart, and they'll feel that that's a form of bullying. Whereas I feel if it's done with as a critique and with compassion, it's you're actually doing somebody a favor, but that they may not perceive it that way.
Yeah,
So basically the inner bully, are like we all have an inner bully. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, thanks.
what you were saying there so really hit me, and I think that our inner bullies they're bullying around different things. So yeah, like exactly like you're saying. So you could have a kind of interaction with somebody where you're critical and you think it's constructive criticism, and there's one person that's grateful that you help them refine, and there's another person that's just upset because it felt like that was attacking. And in my mind, that is not at all an easy problem to solve, because if somebody has a malignant idea virus, is it better to let them continue with that and just go hands off, but let them continue having this thing in their head that ends up being destructive to them and other people? Or do you effectively kill that thing, right? So I think
we have to read that book, because that sounds like a really great book, the Arsehole book. And you know, I think that would be very helpful so that we can see it coming.
Jamin, I have a question. How long into the hour and 20-minute bullying session did you feel that, hey, something's really rotten here? I'm not enjoying this.
Yeah. It was probably roughly at about the moment where I paused it, because at first he's going on and he's making a number of points and I'm taking notes and I'm ready to engage, right? And when that opportunity never came, right? And no acknowledgement of hey, you know what, I totally interrupted, I totally shut you down, I basically, but let me give you an opportunity to respond, right? That literally not once did that ever come in the next hour and 20 minutes. So it was kind of this progressive building, and probably a few minutes after I paused recording, I realized definitely what's going on here. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to wait this out, because I will have an opportunity to speak. And when I do, I'm going to ask David, hey, David, I'd really love to, pick up where I left off and share with you about my vision. But I first want to know, can we create a safe space here where folks are not interrupted and actually listened to, right?
Did you feel he was dismissive?
Absolutely.
But you didn't tell him that.
No, I didn't tell him that. That's correct. Because after an hour and 20 minutes, he was just gone. He was gone so fast, and I can even play his exit if you want. And also you have to also consider, I was a guest in his meeting, right? He had organized this thing, and so I was definitely erring on the side of caution. But if I did have a chance to address him, I would say exactly that. Can we create a safe space, right, and a respectful space where people have an opportunity to express themselves? And if somebody wants to challenge, great, but at least give the person a chance to respond if you're going to challenge. And especially if you interrupt and judge and care. He hadn't even listened to me for 30 seconds. It's all right there. There was that incident where, Robert popped in and we said hello to him and then he left and all that. But after that, I had no opportunity. He had listened to me for 30 seconds, if even that. All that he heard me say was, thoughtware versus software and envisioning and all that. And I had a lot to say, right? And we'll get into that today. But again, it's so subtle. Like I would describe David's skills at being an asshole, I would describe it as masterful. He is a master asshole. And no, really. And I have no problem saying it publicly, because here's the thing. If we do not get our own house in order as a species, we are going down. You know, like there was that that scene in that James Bond movie, Die Another Day, that came out, I think, in 2002. One of my favorite. I'm a big James Bond fan. But anyway, so there's that scene at the end of Die Another Day where he and this villain are in this mortal combat. They're trying to kill each other, and they're on a plane. Well, they and their two respective women are the only ones on this plane. So there's 4 people on this plane, and it's loaded with whatever bomb or satellite control equipment or whatever, and they're fighting to the death, and the plane is going down, right? That's us right now. That's humanity on Mother Earth. We are in a fight to the death, right? For who dominates who gets to own this chunk of land, who gets to own all these cattle, right? Who gets to be in charge of this government and this military, and who gets to blow up who? We're in a freaking mortal combat with each other, and meanwhile, our ship is going down. Well, as it happened, very predictable in a James Bond movie, James Bond kills the bad guy, and they're able to get out and save themselves, he and his girlfriend, and then, you know, presumably they have wonderful lovemaking or whatever they do after that. But that's in the movies. In this real life story, we're going down so crazy fast. Oh, James has had his hand up for a while. Speaking of me being an asshole, I haven't noticed. James, I hope you didn't have your hand up for too long. Carrie, take it away, brother.
No, you're all right, Jim, and thanks, mate. No, I was just going to say, like, it was clear to see, even in that little short clip there, like that. For me, anyway, it was clear to see he may have been watching some of it when he wasn't, you know, when he did before he tuned in. I'm not sure, but it sounds to me like he was definitely he definitely was dismissive of you, in his little shrewd, you know, thinking he was being smart way, like. But it was subtle and dismissive, definitely, you no doubt about it, and then carried on to ignore you. So it was a form of bullying, no doubt. I also think it was definitely, and take heart on this, on his behalf, a form of, he was a bit intimidated by, I think he just saw another dog that's coming along that could probably piss higher up his pole, and that's about the size of it. And then he spoke about egos. Clearly he was only fucking worried about his own ego, and you know what I mean, I don't think he started speaking about money as well. So, you know, we're not here about profit and fucking someone making money out of this at all. We're here for the right reasons. You don't need assholes like that anyway. We're going to come across them all the time, Jim, obviously. But I mean, definitely nothing to do with you, on your behalf. And
Yeah, no. I appreciate that, James. But see, here's the reality: is that assholes, they get up in the morning early in order to do exactly this kind of thing. They will find their way in. And then, and like I mentioned, you should see this guy at the very beginning of the meeting, 2.5 hours earlier. He was so polite and all this, and you think, oh, what a gentleman, right? And so they're very good at getting in, like an expert soccer player, getting in, and then bam, striking right at the right moment with all the right subtlety and everything else. Yes, so go for it.
Basically, he isolated you in a side room.
well, no, actually,
bullies isolate, don't they? Sorry.
No, that's right. But just to be clear, I had requested to create a breakout room. He said, hey, who wants to create a breakout room at the beginning? I said, well, I'd like to talk about this, collective superintelligence, right?
But he was opportunistic about that side room then.
No, now I see what you're saying. You're saying he waited to show his real stripes when we were in a much smaller community where he presumably wasn't going to lose any points for being an asshole in front of a larger group.
But like you say, you've got the proofs, you've got the recording. So okay, people can read that film afterwards, and there will be various interpretations of it. But ultimately, you have got the proof. you know, that you've got the call out proof. So it's game over for that nonsense, hopefully. You know, to some extent, you won't eradicate it just by having the proof, because people will read the proof in a different way.
Yeah, no, and that's what I want. Like, I would love to, you know, have a whole analysis of this. But the first thing, and this is kind of a larger sort of trend about these meetings generally, is we've talked about. I mean, we've got literally many hundreds, even thousands of hours, literally thousands of hours of recording, but they're archived. What we'll do with all this material later is an open question, but the first thing is to record it and actually have the evidence. Nolan's got his hand up. Go for it, Nolan.
Yeah, Jamie put in the chat a while ago that he wanted to make a comment, and I'll just say before he hops on that I think, from my perspective, David was trying to enter the conversation and being honest about where he's coming from. He has a whole background that we're unaware of. That, I mean, I was definitely interested in hearing him out, and okay, did he listen to you talk for 20 minutes and then respond? No. But I think that we're overblowing, and I don't think it's good to be just labeling people assholes like this. I think that's really unwise, especially in community, which is fluid, and people are hopping around here, and I would be very disappointed if further work or relationships with David Boville or other people he's working with are impeded in any way by this one interaction, which, again, because I need to be honest in where I'm coming from and able to, in order to really be here in this space with you guys, otherwise just feel like I need to leave, is I don't see it, like, even watching the recording over again, I don't see it like that at all. I don't think he was trying, like, I don't see it being this giant attack on Jamin thing, or this really subtle undermining. I don't see it like that. I see it more as two different types of people with different ways of thinking and experience, and some inevitable conflict is going to come out of that. I'm not going to not believe him when he says that he's envisioned, or we've envisioned this before, because people have envisioned this kind of stuff for decades, right? So it's not just him. And I think that, like, his frustration over being stuck in a vision and wanting to get something on the ground is a very real thing that a lot of people in these communities we're dealing with are facing. I think a lot of stuff ends up getting just caught and never grounded and actualized. And that's what I was getting from him, is he was like, that's what he meant when he was like, I want to know how I can work with you, you know? Like, that's where I see him coming from, is he's like, yeah, I don't know.
If I might, Nolan, you're right in what you're saying, because, and I'm only going to say this in as polite a way as I can, you know, and you get where I'm coming from here now as well. You've often mentioned you're a bit younger, you're not, you know, we're a lot older and experienced in life. And when you do get a little older, you start to recognize sometimes when somebody's actually fucking pulling the piss, like, you know what I mean? Sometimes you don't even recognize it when they're being subtle and, overly nice and everything else, and very businesslike. I think the point James is making there is part of that book is there are occasions where you could still be an asshole and come across as being a perfectly legitimate business-like manner and being very polite in the way you're saying it and sound very respectful and knowledgeable in what you're saying. But at the same time, you mentioned 3 words: subtle, dismissive, and he was definitely subtle, dismissive, but he was also straight to the point about matter of fact, is what he was saying. He's straight to the point, yeah, but that's how he was getting across how his professionalism, and that was another way then of putting Jamin down. So he was subtle, dismissive, and basically there's a saying here, I think you have it as well, if the shoe fits, and the video proves it, you're just not seeing that it's there as I am anyway. I only seen the short clip and you sat down for the rest of the hour, and I could see it, because it only has to be, if you get a context of at the start, you could see it straight away when you're looking for it. Carry on, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Really good points. And see, part of this is it's not an open and shut case, right? Because precisely there is so much subtlety and nuance, and it's not like a bully on the playground who just comes up and punches you in the face, right? And it's just so obvious like that. In fact, these professional assholes are extremely skilled at not getting traffic tickets, so to speak, right? At not being obvious about it, not being screamingly obvious about it. But they are masters at their craft. I was at Microsoft for a number of years. I was corporate strategy manager at Microsoft, so I dealt with people at all different levels. And anyway, James, I really appreciate your points there. Jamie has had his hand up for a while, as Nolan pointed out, and also love to get back to some of your points, Nolan. Jamie, go for it. Jamie, we cannot hear you. I see that you unmuted yourself, so that leads me to believe you're trying to talk, but we can neither hear nor see you. Okay, now we can see you, but we can't hear you. And Jamie, let me just mention, there's another way to participate, which is to dial in. And in the email that I sent out, there's all the dial-in info. You may need the meeting ID or whatever. You just type that in, and then we can hear you clear as a bell. Melissa does that sometimes. I'm just going to pause for a second, and then Jamie will be back when he's back. So asked, did the book offer a strategy for dealing with what seemed to be a personal attack? The book, it's actually been over 10 years since I've read the book. But it did definitely offer strategies for how to deal with that within a corporation, right? This is a whole different thing where you've got all these different communities, and so we don't have to be together, these different communities, right? It's not like a corporation where you have to work with the person or whatever, right? So you have to deal with it. So it's a whole different context. But the solution definitely includes calling the person out and definitely addressing it. Not addressing it is not the answer, right? Just letting it pass, letting it slip. And the thing is, I think we have to look at this systemically. It's not a matter of, hey, Jamin was offended and David did the offending, and therefore we need to, get on that and fix that. No, we need to solve this systemically, right? We need to have a bullying-free school, basically. And that's why the book is called The No Asshole Rule, because one of the bottom lines of the book is, as a corporation, it's binary. Is this going to be an asshole friendly environment or an environment where assholes are excluded? Their behavior is excluded. And it also talks about, you know, assholes getting reformed, right? So there is a path for reformation, but the path is definitely not letting them do their thing. In fact, I'm reminded of a quote from none other than Donald Trump, way back in the 1980s, before most of you were born. And actually, not most of you. Let's see. So writes, but okay. I think that's why we have to be alert to our own inner bully. Yeah, absolutely. And see, and this is why I'm opening this up. You know, am I doing anything wrong? If so, somebody please call me out. Right? Let's get it on and let's get to the root of it. Right? All right. Looks like
I know for one anyway that like I know exactly where you're coming from. I put up with a whole year in my final year of college with a professional asshole. To be without naming names, the man had tenure on it. But the point is, you know, an asshole is an asshole. You have to call it out. Like, so I know exactly where you're coming from. Anyway, I can understand the anger and the frustration and everything else afterwards, and the effect of it. Because I suppose it was a year of it I put up with. That still nearly lasted with me. It's nearly, I'm only getting rid of the lasting effects of it now. And that's nearly over a year later. That's being honest. So I understand where you're coming from.
all righty. Jamie, welcome back. And it looks like that's you on the phone as well. So we've got two Jamies in the room. Whenever you're both muted. Both Jamies are muted, by the way. So if you want to unmute the phone, Jamie. No, you're still muted, Jamie. On your phone with the 440 number, that is muted also. So we need to unmute that phone so we can hear you. All right. Anyway, Jamie, we'll hope to hear from you whenever that's.
We can unmute his phone.
Oh, I'm gonna unmute your phone, Jamie. Sorry. Okay, I unmuted your phone. Try saying something now, Jamie. Jamie? No, I unmuted your phone, but we still can't hear. It may be on your phone's end. I don't know.
It says I'm on mute.
No, now we can hear you. Now we can hear you. Speak.
Okay.
Speak, Jamie.
Oh my God. Well, thank you. That was a lot of work. I wanted to say a couple things that I've been listening to. Just give me a thumbs up if you guys can hear me okay. Okay. So I'm going to cut this down the middle like a watermelon because the simple fact is everything Nolan said is completely right. I don't know the guy's name, David, whatever. He had a lot of great points, and maybe he's far ahead on this journey. That's great. That's not the topic. I would love to explore everything he said about financing and teamwork and all of those things. That's not the problem. The problem is one simple word, and everyone has to hone your skills, chisel your skills to observe this as it's coming towards you. It's called condescension. You've had relationships, college professors, co-workers. I come from a world of federal attorneys, U.S. attorneys, FBI agents, DEA agents. Everyone knows everything, and they all have machine guns, and they're never wrong. Some people are never wrong because they're never wrong. Like Guy McPherson, he can describe to you a cooperative system and with explicit knowledge, really top shelf stuff. And he doesn't condescend. The asshole book, which I just ordered, and I'm sure I probably could have wrote it, working in the federal level, everyone there's an asshole. And the very one thing that they all have in common, some of them are the masters. I've met some master federal attorneys that just, you know, look at our president, okay? This guy, he's so good at it, he stopped trying. He just is like a bulldozer now. He doesn't care anymore. He's the president of the United States. He doesn't have to even hide his assholeness. So one thing I want everybody to pay attention to is what Nolan is saying is these guys have value. The problem that everybody else is saying is it's hard to get them to stop condescending. And what I've always done in my career is I would just stop the conversation and say, excuse me, Bill, what you're saying seems really important, but the way you're saying it seems like you're being an asshole. You're condescending, and I can't listen to your message because of the way you're delivering it. Maybe you could write it down, or you could dictate it, and I could listen to it. But this communication that I'm having with you, I'm finding you're repelling my interests, and I'm feeling unable to participate. And most of them will recondescend and assume you're stupid and move on. But a few of them, you can catch their empathy. I would say 5% you can catch their empathy. Most of them, when you call them on it, they're going to throw some type of, well, what's your background? What have you done in life? They're going to try to find a way to make sure you don't measure up to them. And that's their skill. They want to say, well, oh, just a minute, Jim. Weren't you a policeman? You have no knowledge of how the world operates or coding. Could you code? Can you type? You know, they'll just, that's when they pull the wound open and jam in the fucking needle. And what they're really saying is, I'm above you. You'll never, ever, ever be here. And you're not deserving of my time. And that's fine, because they leave the room and we get to have this conversation together. But just the one thing I got to say, I got to get in the shower and go pick up my girlfriend and take her to a medical appointment. The condescending, when that is how they start out of the gate, and it starts slowly, kind of like a roller coaster. The condescensions, they start to tell you about what they've done, what they know, why your experience doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. And pretty soon you get to the top and you're looking around going, wow, this guy knows everything. And then boom, down you go. And he drags you down with him till you get to the bottom and knocks the wind out of you. And this is an art form. And I'll tell you who's good at it is federal attorneys. You could be the smartest guy in the world, and when they're done talking to you, you feel like a blithering idiot because you're certain they're right, even though they have no facts. It's still, they're so convincing that, I mean, look, you don't have to look beyond, Adolf Hitler and Idi Amin and all these despots all over the world, Pol Pot, that have this skill. They have this skill. They could be morons. They could be nothing, but they climb out of the dirt because they've got this one skill that's like a salesman on hyper steroids. And they're so good at it. And quite frankly, a lot of colleges are full of these guys. A lot of good quality universities are full of these guys and gals who they invite debate because they want to chop your head off. They pretend to invite debate, but what they're really doing is playing whack-a-mole with your ideas. And they're going to crush every whack, bad idea. Whack, bad idea. I've been here 30 years. Whack, bad idea. So eventually, to get through their classes, you write your paper to suit their vision. We've all done that. You write your paper to suit the vision of the guy with the chalkboard. And if you can get the guy or gal with the chalkboard's vision and you find how to thread that needle, you're going to get an A. If it's not fitting their vision, their individual vision that they're convinced is the only way to look at it, you'll get a D, and they'll eke you through to make you feel bad. They'll move you along the conveyor belt. But guys like Guy McPherson don't do that. And that's what I want you to notice between, I don't know this guy you were talking to, but the behavior of an asshole in a public setting, in a work setting, as soon as you have to be like a dog. You got to be sniffing for condescension. And when you smell it, you've got to reapproach or disengage because you're not going to change these people. Like Jamin said, they get up in the morning. It's their condition. I used to train at the DEA Academy in Quantico. And I would tell guys, you're a good guy for 8 hours a day. Assholes are assholes 24 hours a day, and they start about 5 years old. So You're never going to out fucking think these people. It's a condition. They were raised this way. Okay? So I'm going to go on mute on all these devices. I don't know what I got going on here, but I'm going to listen for a little longer, and I got to get off in about 10 minutes. But watch for the condescension. It is the thin layer of ice that you don't want to step into. Walk around the condescension. Don't fall through the ice. The guy with the idea or the gal might have great ideas. I'm sure there were people at NASA when they sent when they landed on the moon the first time. There was a lot of guys like that in there, but they were able to pull together. The condescending guy, gal, can't work as a team. They use the word team. What they mean is me as your boss. That's their definition of team. They're the I in team. Condescension is the way to decipher that. They can't not hide their condescension, because once they engage the first gear to get you talking, their second gear is to convince you that they're right and you're wrong, and they can't avoid the condescension. It's the only weak link in their armor. Going on triple mute.
Awesome. Jamie, that was so enlightening as always. And this is why we need you here. And listen, dude, after you shower up and all that and you're driving, get back on the phone. Dial back in just like you did, because we need you here, bro. We need you here. The ship is going down, and we need you. So do what you got to do and come back when you can, because we'll be here for another 6 hours. And that's another thing about our meetings that we do, long format. So we have time to really get into it, right? And we stick it out. So anyway, great stuff. Yeah, and So wrote a good point that there's a song. It's not what you say, it's the way that you say it. That's what gets results. And Emery, right? Yeah, no, go. Go for it, Jamie.
No, I want to be on mute and just listen.
Oh, okay. Well, can you mute yourself? No, that's a serious question. I mean, if you can't, I'm happy to mute you. But then when you want to unmute, we'd have to figure out, you could either, I don't know, text me or something.
Just go ahead and mute me.
Okay, I'll mute you, but then text me if you want to talk and you need to get unmuted, or I'll just unmute you from time to time. I don't know, I'll figure it out. Okay, muting Jamie. Okay. And let's not forget that Jamie is muted and he can't unmute himself. So I'll keep an eye out for texts in case Jamie texts me. Anyway, yeah, I'll go unmute myself, and whoever would like to jump in, love to hear from you.
Jane, is it okay to change the subject?
Absolutely so.
I was interested to put this to the group. So many people are on antidepressants of the Prozac type in the population, serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They keep saying, in the newspapers, what percentage of America, what percentage of UK, and so on these drugs. And increasingly people are wanting to come off them because they find it limits their various capacities. Sometimes it limits, I've actually been on them before and been through the journey of coming off them, which was quite difficult. I didn't know, I wouldn't say they were addictive as such, but the symptoms you get coming off them are so terrible, it would incline you to stay on them. But it kind of, my experience of them is that it limits your critical thinking capacity. That was how they affected me, but it also limited my empathy. And of course, when you come off them, all that comes back, and it's very shocking to the system. Now, when you've got a large number of the population, large percentage of the population on this stuff, somebody called it, like, you know, the book Brave New Worlds by Aldous Huxley. In that book, they have soma. It's like a happy drug. I don't know whether you know that book, that text. It was, you know, far-reaching in its day. So you could say that these SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitor drugs, work very much like soma. So if we're talking about collective superintelligence, you know, how do we get beyond that thing that so many people are so drugged, albeit legally?
How do we get beyond that? So many people are drugged out.
Yeah, they're you know, they're tamped down, you know, with emotionally and in their thinking. I mean, what I noticed when I was on it for an anxiety condition that resulted in allergies. But although it really worked in its time for what I needed, but it damaged my ability to think. I used to be quite a deep thinker, and I could be very incisive. All that went. And also, I found that I put up with stuff from people around me, my children and whoever, that I shouldn't have shrugged off. Things that I needed to deal with, I didn't deal with. And also, although I was kind to people when I was on it, I didn't actually feel, I didn't have any compassion. It was almost like I was being kind out of duty. So if we've got such a high percentage, all I'm saying is that if we've got such a high percentage of people in the population on these medications, and with COVID-19, who knows how many more people have jumped on board, you know, feeling depressed during lockdown, how do we, you know, push for that creative superintelligence when we've got this this thing going on?
Brilliant, brilliant. So, thank you. No, this is a great question, and I would characterize it as follows, just to kind of reframe your question. Is, you know, here we are again in the spaceship that's going down, and there is so much tension and dysfunctionality and heartbreak. And I was heartbroken when I was 5 years old. My mom left for the second time, and this time she went to a whole different continent. I mean, she was gone, right? And for a 5-year-old kid who needs his mom, that broke my heart. And, you know, and I went through, you know, years being like, feeling really screwed up, feeling really out of place, really neurotic. And I just, you know, we've all had hard childhoods. Probably not a single person in this room who didn't have a hard childhood. And that gets to the larger point, right? That it's not just these obvious things like my mom left, therefore I've got an excuse, right? But it's, you know, the bullying at school that happens all the time. It's just relentless, right? And I went to what I thought was a pretty nice school on average, but the bullying was relentless, right? You know, I'm a pretty big person and, you know, relatively strong, I guess. So I could sort of hold my own, but my goodness, it still affected the hell out of me, right? In my experiences at school. It's just, it's toxic. It's absolutely toxic. And I think that if either we deal with this internal demon, right, or the whole stable of internal demons, if there's more than one, which there probably are, either we deal with that and find a way that we can work together and get control of our ship, or, you know what, it's just going to be a slugfest until we crash. And so, but getting to your question, so here's kind of where I've netted out, and this kind of got to the point that sort of got us started here, which is that my proposal is that we actually take steps to have, you know, a gatekeeping function, for lack of a better word, and and an expulsion mechanism. Like I mentioned, there's 3 people, I won't name names, of the 3 people who cannot be here at this meeting, at least for the time being, right? Because they hurt people during the meeting, right? And I'm just super clear, I will not tolerate that. I will mute people, I will eject them from meetings, and I won't let them come back if they're intentionally hurtful, right? Fortunately, the cases we've had to deal with are very, very clear. This case that we're talking about today with David, because, well, in my experience, because he's so masterful at it, it's a lot harder to write the guy a speeding ticket, right? And in my experience at Microsoft, similarly, it's these folks who, in a meeting, you'll hear them laughing, especially if there's, a senior vice president in the meeting. Oh, they'll be laughing and friendly, and the senior vice president will walk away thinking, this guy's great, right? But then the senior vice president walks out, and they stick it to you, right? And so I think this sort of having a double face is a common thread among professional assholes, where neither one is the real them, right? If they're being nice, they're all right, I'm going to put on this fucking act and be nice, right? So that I can get the promotion or whatever. But man, if there's somebody who I can beat the shit out of, I'm going to do it at the first opportunity. Unless they, yeah, go ahead.
But how do we, if so many people in the population are zoned out, on a feeling level and a thinking level because of legal medications, how do we kind of address that to get this collective super intelligence? I mean, presumably at the workplace that you mentioned, there were people who couldn't bear it and went to the doctor, and there must have been the same percentage of people there zoned out on antidepressants as you'd find in the general population, or maybe higher even. How do we get beyond that, people being zoned out? How do we get beyond that? I mean, it's an impossible question, really, isn't it?
Well, no, actually, I think that the answer is actually right here in front of us. And that is, and I invite you to come to the Divine Feminine meetings, which my sister Jackie and Myra and Melissa lead. It is such a healing space, and it's empowered me to really step up and, do my job of being gatekeeper, right? So I think that the answer is a safe space. The answer is to enact the no asshole rule. When it happens, call it out, right? And if someone is wrong, calling out, a false alarm, fine, we deal with that. I don't think in the case that we're analyzing today, I don't think it's any false alarm at all. I think it's very clear, but that's my thought. If someone else has a different perception, say it. Please defend David, right? Support him in the behavior that he's doing, if you believe in it, right? And, but I believe that sweeping it under the rug is not the answer. I think that's what drives people to take antidepressants. It's like they don't feel like they have a way of being heard, of being respected, of being treated fairly, of being loved, of being shown compassion. So you know what? If I'm here in this freaking rat cage where everyone's slitting each other's throats, you know what? I'm just going to dope myself up and shut down and tune the hell out. Right?
If I may.
Please, Jackie, goodness.
I agree with you. I believe that we're always medicating the symptoms away, and the symptoms are adaptations. And the real is adaptation to deal with the real wounds that are never addressed. And the wounds are, am I heard? Am I seen? And am I worthy? Can I show up and be 100% myself and feel safe and feel welcome and feel loved and feel honored? And because we don't know how to seek that out for ourselves, we just numb ourselves in order to stay in the situations we're in, and we don't know how to recreate that agency within ourselves. And really quick story, I also suffered from very, very bad anxiety. But because I always have to be in control and I always have to be in charge and maintain peace and run my home, well, the body, not me, my body was so wise that it took all of the anxiety and it just centered it in my brain. And I developed a somatic disorder, and it was called psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. My brain was mimicking seizures every time I was having an anxiety attack, and they couldn't find it. So I was put on antidepressants in order to mitigate the symptoms. And I was on that for 11 years to mitigate the mimicking seizures in my brain. It wasn't until I separated from the one cause, the root cause, that I didn't realize what was taking my efficacy away was my mother. I didn't realize that the one person in my life that I thought could give me validation was pilfering that from me. And because I was handing over my sovereignty and I was handing over my agency and my identity because I could see myself through only her eyes. It was her illness, and it was her inability to accept herself. It was her envy of my accomplishments that highlighted her inadequacies. And that envy then started spewing on me. And because I adapted that voice as my own, it went into my brain, and all of a sudden it became my identity. So I think it's very important that we create safe spaces for one another. I think it's very important that we honestly reflect to one another the beauty and the integrity that we all have. And we need to create these spaces. I was bullied so much in high school, I was put in a hospital with a concussion just because girls didn't like the way I walked. I mean, this happens all the time. And I think we see ourselves as victims. I see them as victims. I see those who perpetuate that violence on me as the ones that are victimized because they can't get themselves out, and they find no other way but to then harm and spew that hatred onto someone else. So when we build up that resilience and that self-love within ourselves, then we don't need to medicate the symptoms away if we work within ourselves inside out. And I think that's what's so beautiful about these spaces and the divine feminine. It truly is about who we are as being and addressing the fact that we've not been allowed to be who we are, to have that voice, to have that connection with other people that look at us and we see ourselves in them. I never had that. And so at 48 years old, I feel the safest and the most grounded and the most loving that I've ever been in my life. And that's because I have found community where I can truly be myself. And once you can truly be yourself and truly love yourself, now I feel empowered to share what I have inside because I feel received and I feel welcome and I feel safe.
You have hit the nail on the head, Jackie's sister. That is so beautiful. Thank you. Goodness. Beautiful. And so did you raise your hand?
Oh, it's quite interesting what you said. I don't want to be personal, Jamin, but you know, you said about your mother leaving. Years ago, it was a lot of years ago actually, I belonged to this group. We were a very small group and we were intensely creative. And we were so different. We were all different ages as well. And looking back on it, we produced something. I was looking for a common denominator because we were all so different. And I discovered that one person in the group, her mother had died when she was very young. I'd been abandoned by my mother. And she didn't want to abandon us, but it happened because of circumstances. And the other person had been abandoned by her mother, adopted as a baby. And I just thought that it's quite an interesting, I just thought, you know, the not being with the mother and those kind of people find these kind of community things relevant to them. It's like they're creating a bigger mother. I just, you know, I know it's a bit random what I've said, but and you're creating these communities of communities, and I kind of link that to an abandonment by the mother for whatever reason.
The mother wound is the most primal. The divine feminine is about fiercely protecting. And when a child is in that developmental stage, from especially toddler, where the development of the brain is that lower part of the brain where they're still developing, that primal part of the brain for its safety, security, all of that. And so when you have a child that's abandoned by the primary source of life, we came through them. What does that tell a child? What does a child think about themselves when the one person in life that's supposed to adore me and keep me safe and tell me that no matter what I do, I'm okay. No matter what I do, I love you. There's nothing you can do that would ever make me not love you. That is the power that a child then grounds their identity. That is the fertile soil from which they can then develop their divinity, their potential. So if that's not there, it's depriving a child of truly that path of where they're going to be, because they don't know where they're from. They were denied love and they were rejected. And when a mother rejects a child, that is a primal wound that we spend the rest of our lives healing from. And it's when we enter adulthood that we have to create that space within ourselves to say, there's only one shot at a parent, especially a mom raising us. And if they're not there, they're not there. But now it's our job to parent ourselves. It's our job to step into that role and become our own parent and release them of their unconsciousness, forgive them and release them from that. Because if they could not that action is not natural, that is not nature. So for a woman, a mother, to completely turn away biologically, spiritually from our nature, we are nature. Mother Earth would never abandon us. We are her. So for us to take physiologically, biologically, spiritually, and turn away from our children, that is a break within a human being. That is
well, one of these situations in this small group was the child was adopted, so there was an element of choice. The other one, there was absolutely no choice at all. The mother died, and in my case, that although it happened, it was not my mother's choice. It was social circumstances. So it's not really. I'm not kind of interested in, apportioning blame. I was quite interested in the psychology of our group that we created, which was, just when you get that, it's like a rock band forming. It's a magical thing that even happens, because nobody's going to turn up and nobody's going to bother with it. Nobody's going to go on the journey. So I was interested that we were people that, because of this mother experience, that we were able to create this community, this mother in the form of community together. And that's, I just thought it might be interesting for Jamin to know that, because he's obviously creating communities, and I kind of linked it to that, which might not be true for him, but it was true for us, I think.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. No, that's really good reflection. In fact, it reminds me of when Jamie, who was on earlier, and it looks like his phone is still on the call. I'm going to unmute Jamie just for the heck of it, in case he ever wants to jump in.
Come on, Jamie.
But anyway, Jamie and I, about a year and a half ago, we met with the Vicar General of I'm going to mute Jamie because I'm getting noise. But Jamie, just text me when you want to jump in, okay? And I'll unmute you at that point. Okay, muting Jamie. So we met with the Vicar General of the Cleveland Catholic Diocese, one of the biggest dioceses of the Catholic Church in the country. And he's since been promoted to bishop. We met with him for a full hour, which is pretty rare that they grant that big of a meeting, but we had sent a really professional letter and addressing Pope Francis and his encyclical Laudato Si on care for our common home. So there we are meeting with the Vicar General. in this big conference room. And when we were laying out all the facts, and I literally had Guy McPherson on call, on standby, in case the Vicar General wanted to hear the facts from the leading scientist who had it all synthesized. I literally had him on standby. He was ready for my call, my speed dial, and I'd put him on the phone with the Vicar General. But Jamie and I laid out the basics of the facts and just how fast this ship is going down and how soon we can expect to crash. And he said, he looked at us and he said, you know, this is very hard to think about. And at that point, I just had this little inspiration, and I said, Father, Jamie and I can think about this because we had the good fortune that at around age 5, for both of us, our worlds fell apart.
The worst had already happened.
The worst had already happened, but the point I made to him was, I said, look, Father, because of that, we can imagine the world falling apart because it's already happened to us.
Yes, that's interesting. That's what, I think that's what sort of galvanized us, and we made this kind of other mother in the form of a community.
Well, yeah, and also, Jamie talked about splitting the watermelon in two. I really think there's a bifurcating pathway, right? You either, when you've been through this kind of severe trauma, either you come out on the side of compassion and wanting to love everyone and everything, right, and heal the world, or you go to the dark side, right? And you say, well, I don't see, and here's the thing, I don't think they actually, I mean, you know, I talked about my heartbreak and everything and all the stuff that I went through. I think that any certified asshole, and that's another distinction in the book, is certified asshole. It's one thing if you have a suspicion, it's another thing if it's just like case closed, been proven, right? So certified assholes, I think they were also heartbroken as a kid. And, you know, whereas I had so many blessings in my life, I could complain and complain about this and that and my mom leaving and all that, but I also had a ton of blessings. My dad's mother, my grandmother, came to live with us. And I also had wonderful aunties and uncles and, you know, role models in the community and at school and all that. And so as I was working through my own stuff, you know, running away from home and, you know, getting into trouble and stealing and, you know, all kinds of stuff. But, you know, I was able to work through those tumultuous years and come out the other side. And when I say come out the other side, right? It's not like, oh yeah, and at age 23, I was all cured and everything was great, right? You know, I still have a scar on my forehead from when my brother threw a giant rock at me. I still have a scar on my elbow when my brother came at me with nunchucks, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, we have these scars. It doesn't necessarily all go away. And in fact, when I first got on this call at the very beginning, it was just me and Nolan. I shared with him that, you know, in a way, I'm still coming out of this multi-year funk from my marriage failing, right? And so it's not like it's not like the process is ever complete. And in fact, for me, the process will not be complete until we stop this downward spiral. Hundreds of species are going extinct every day. You know, it's a tragedy if a beetle's mother disappears and the baby beetle is left on its own, right? It's quite another thing if that species of beetle goes extinct. Yeah, it's a bit more. I think it's a bit harder on the beetle to go extinct than for their mom to leave, right? So extinction is forever. We're on the edge of extinction, humanity, and just to put it in very plain, simple terms, either we figure out how to come together and work together constructively and in a loving way, right? And you know, I was a day camp counselor for 2 summers, and then did some other stuff with Parks and Recs. I've worked with kids for years and years, and the bottom line is, you know, even there, you know, leading a group of 15 boys, every once in a while there was a boy who would be troublesome, right? And you know, and would engage in bullying. And I got right on top of that. I got really, because you know, these are kids, right? It's not like dealing with an adult who's got really sophisticated machinery for hurting people. They were more just right in the moment as kids. And I would give them a timeout, and it was a timeout as much for the kid as for the grown-up in charge, right? And it gave us both a time to cool off and then sit down and talk about it, right? Where was I going with that? I don't know. This is such a deep space. It's like, once we get into this heart space, right? Now notice, this conversation would be totally impossible if there were an active practicing asshole in the room. Totally impossible, right? That's why I made the analogy earlier. It's like somebody farting in an elevator, right? The whole elevator is impacted, right? So I really think this is fundamental. And this gets back to the community of communities. If we're going to create a community of communities with any kind of integrity, there has to be a no asshole rule right on the front, right on the main entrance. And it needs to be enforced, right? Until a couple of months ago, more like 3 months ago, I actually never had the experience of having to eject someone who was in the conversation, right? There are now 3 people who cannot be in this meeting now. Now, does that mean in the future they can never come back? No, that doesn't mean that at all. In fact, I'm working on how do we, you know, give these folks a pathway back in.
I was very taken with, I was very amused by the guy who was wielding an axe in his little slot. Did you see that? In one of the groups that I tuned in on, I just watched it. I wasn't part of the conversation, and you'd had to ask if he was dominating. And he was dominating, and you had to ask him to stop, and he kept wanting to talk. You did it very graciously. In the background, he was just taking an axe, and it was so funny. It was so funny.
That was,
it was like,
yeah.
It was in a play, and I was just so glad it wasn't in real life, and that it was an axe on Zoom, you know. But it was very amusing and funny. You know, it was funny. He was certainly showing how he felt, I felt. Unless he was just chopping wood, you know, I don't know, maybe he had a wood pile nearby and he was in the middle of doing it anyway, I don't know, but it was funny.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was a trip. Anyway, the bottom line is we need to create a space that's loving, compassionate, safe, healing. And we need to get this soft stuff right. Because if we don't get this soft stuff right, I just don't see how we're going to move forward in any meaningful way. And in fact, there's a woman who participated in our meetings who 2 people were mean to. And that's why those 2 people are not here. And it was kind of interesting because the woman was being, who I love, and she's absolutely welcome back here anytime. But she's very open, vulnerable, expressing, and it's almost like that, like activates, you know, the lurking asshole within a guy who hasn't dealt with that part of himself, right? They see a woman who's being vulnerable, it's time to attack. I mean, it was like a lightning rod. And it's like these guys, it's like they lost it. And I had to mute them and, you know, that's part of the reason why we have a waiting room here, is so that people like that can be filtered out.
Yeah, there was a lot of projection. I remember that. And it was going on in Vegan World 2026 on Basecamp. So Sailesh asked us to create a brand new, which we didn't have, because we really felt that together we would create out of the void. You know, we don't need prescriptions in order to come together and meet. We wanted to create the new world that we were formulating. And unfortunately, there was so many words that were brought in, unconsciousness that was brought in, that we were forced into create a culture, policies and procedures on how to communicate effectively, respectfully, and consciously in Basecamp and Vegan World 2026. And we're right now finishing it up to implement that right now. So even there, where we really thought we were all are like-hearted people, it was still necessary.
Yeah. So, did you raise your hand?
No, I was just, you know, approving of Jackie.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask on a different subject, regarding the aerosol masking effect that you discussed on other meetings with Guy McPherson present? Does anyone know about the because of the lockdown, anything about the increased temperatures that might be going on at the moment? I can't seem to find it anywhere. I've done an extensive search. A couple of people allude to it in today's Guardian. There was sort of like a sort of end of the world type article on, oh, it's growing, it's going to be so hot we won't be able to survive. But it wasn't within a time frame that the writer had written this. But it was a kind of like, oh my God, you know, it was that kind of article. But I can't find any details on, you know, are there some scientists out there measuring what's going on? You know, because it's being put to the test to some extent because of the lockdowns.
Yeah, Guy McPherson has addressed it. I've heard him discuss it, and it's, you know, the fact that it's really not being discussed out in the open. I mean, there's an elephant in the room that's so big that, like, his trunk is out the window, his legs are out other windows. I mean, there's no room to breathe in the room anymore. The elephant is so freaking big. We are exponentially overheating. That's going to kill off our ability to grow food and feed ourselves, and it's going to set off wildfires and rising seas and all this is happening in a very short period of time. We might all be dead in a couple of years or less, right? And yet we have not been able to get ourselves together. And when I say ourselves, when I talk about we and us, what I'm really talking about is the tiniest sliver of the human population. I'm talking about on the order of the 1% of humanity that's the most dialed in, the most awake, who have really done our homework, right, on ourselves. And, you know, basically people like, let's look around this room, right? I know there's a couple still images here and there. James is an amazing artist, and he's got his artwork up there, but look around the room. I'm talking about people like us, okay? Now, the 1% of humanity that's the most awake, the most dialed in, we're talking about close to 80 million people. If we can get the 80 million of us to come together and work together in a constructive, productive way, that 1% of us, that 80 million of us, can be the trim tab, which moves the rudder, which moves the ship, right? The rudder might be, say, I don't know, the 10% of humanity. You know, the other 9% who are maybe almost there, but not quite there, right? Well, imagine that the 1% of us create something absolutely incredible in terms of a community of communities, right? Do you think the other 9% of, again, the top 10%, and when I say top, what I really mean is not money or power or anything like that, or education, or anything in the story. It could literally be people who don't know how to read, but who are dialed in, awake, you know, in tune with their heart, in tune with nature, and really ready for what President Vicente Fox refers to as the real game. To play the real game, we need to come together and we need to work together. There's 9 of us on this call. Great. That's a start. Literally. I mean, one day I had to wake up and say, you know what? I want to do a public video conference to which everyone's invited, where we can start to grapple with our problems. Right? And here we are. So we are a community, and there are lots of communities out there. And one of the things that I've realized over the last few weeks is that to me, it makes sense, and I'm happy to discuss this, but we don't have to, but to me, it makes sense that these communities exist for a reason. People are comfortable in their kind of micro tribe or micro community. Like, we all know each other, we're comfortable. There's some other meetings happening where it's a kind of a whole different take on humanity, on the world, on our problems, on our opportunities. And so what makes sense to me, and by the way, we're 2.5 hours in, so we might take a break here in a couple of minutes. So we'll handle that in a second. But what makes sense to me is that the community of communities, it makes sense that each community maintain their own thing, their own integrity, their own community, their own culture, their own whatever, right? And so one of the things that we're working on right now, Nolan and I, and everyone's invited to participate, is reaching out to, for lack of a better word, the leadership of these different communities, and saying, hey, we're setting about to build a community of communities with these, core principles, this objective, this mission to save life on Earth, right? And to do so by ourselves reconfiguring into a new modality, right? I've used the term collective superintelligence, CSI. That captures a lot of it, but not all of it. I don't think there is a way to capture all of it. I don't know, talk to God or something. Maybe God has okay, great. But anyway, I think we're off to a really good start here. And frankly, a really obvious start. We're starting in the most obvious place. My sister Jackie and I speak Spanish, and we have a great expression in Spanish, which goes like this. Hablando se entiende la gente. Talking is how people understand each other. Not writing, not this, not poisonous tweets, no. Talking, coming together and talking. And I would just add in, obviously, in a non-bullying, non-toxic context. That's how we understand each other. So the obvious thing is for us to come together and work together and organize, reconfigure ourselves as this 1%, right? But how do you attract the 1%? Well, and this I'll get to in the document. Maybe after the break we can read some more, but I think we're deserving of a break right now. Does anyone have any requests as to how long the break should be? We're typically pretty democratic about this.
How about half an hour?
All right, we've got a vote for half an hour. Any others?
Half an hour is a bit long, I'm thinking anyway, like, so I'll go 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I'll be quite happy with that.
All right.
I vote for 20 minutes too, because I have to get on the VCI meeting at 3, so I don't want to miss too much.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, let's make it 20 minutes, and we'll see you all at 5 minutes before the top of the hour, at 55 after. Okay, it'll be 1:55 here, other time zones, however they are. So we'll see you all in 20 minutes. I'll pause recording in the meantime. We're not broadcasting, so now